Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Wednesday, and as always on a Wednesday, all of our guests are brought to you by our title sponsor. So happy to have them aboard. Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. All of our guests, including Ian Furness from KJR Sports Radio, Fox 13 Sports down in Seattle. And before we get to Ian, we want to run this clip. Jerry DiPoto, president of baseball operations for the Seattle Mariners, in hot water for this.
If you go back and you look in a decade, those teams that win 54% of the time always wind up in the postseason, and they more often than not wind up in World Series. So there's your bigger picture process. Nobody wants to hear the goal this year is we're going to win 54% of the time, because sometimes 54% is one year you're going to win 60%, another year you're going to win 50%. It's whatever it is. But over time, that type of mindset gets you there. If what you're doing is focusing year to year on what do we have to do to win the World Series this year, you might be one of the teams that's laying in the mud and can't get up for another decade. So we're actually doing the fan base a favor and asking for their patience to win the World Series while we continue to build a sustainably good roster.
The show, too.
He is.
She's treated us well, but basically saying that a title, a championship, isn't a priority. And with that, we bring in from KJR Sports Radio in Seattle, Fox 13 Sports, Ian Furness. So nice, Ian, to see another city with a franchise delivering a message like that. How are you?
Misery loves company, I guess. I was just talking to Ryan about that off the air. It's a similar message that you guys seem to get every now and then, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least someone was delivering the message there.
Yeah.
So there is that. But the message is similar. How's that going over in Seattle?
Lead balloon crashing to the earth. And by the way, you know what their winning percentage was this year, missing the playoffs? 54.3%. I mean, their ability to be completely tone deaf and out of touch with anything in terms of what the fan base is thinking or reality or professional sports or what the goal is, it really is stunning. And it's stunning how consistently it happens. This was another case of that yesterday where Jerry DiPoto, and first of all, and maybe only you guys will get this and understand the significance, but we, as a radio station and even the flagship station, although they're in the back pocket, so we weren't going to hear much from them. But everyone was asking the same question fan-wise. Hey, why aren't you guys airing that? Why aren't you carrying it live? And normally something like that, we might carry it live on the radio station. Why wasn't it streamed on their YouTube channel? Like their preseason, by the way, media availability is. Well, I mean, they were very calculated. They delivered this message, this awful message to their fan base, which they raised the ticket prices again for next year on the fan base. They delivered it at a time where Major League Baseball's archaic rules do not allow anything to be broadcast or streamed, which would conflict with a baseball playoff game. So instead of doing this press conference at 10 a.m. and allowing it to air live and then having reaction afterwards, they instead waited until 1 p.m. when the games were underway. By the way, their preseason media availability is at 10 a.m., and it could have also been held on Monday. It's a message nobody wanted to hear. It's a message that for some reason they wanted to say, but I think they knew deep down nobody should see it live, so now all you get is clips and snippets here and there and sound bites like you guys just had. It's just an organization that just doesn't get it, guys. They just don't get it. And the best thing was DiPoto also said they took a step forward this season. They won a fewer game, and they also didn't make the postseason. So go figure.
Yeah. Is the issue here, Ian, on top of losing, and what is it, 5 playoff appearances since the start of the franchise, but the complaint with the Canucks management ownership, there's no read on the market. Is that similar down there with the Mariners?
I mean, we joke around a lot and go back and forth with Canucks and crack and all that. No, 100%. Your fan base is the same as our fan base right now. The message is delivered. Nobody gets it. Nobody understands it. They have no idea what the fan base is thinking because, frankly, they fill the ballpark. They do a great job. They do a lot of things. Bobbleheads and fireworks. That's the joke down here. It's bobbleheads and fireworks, and they do a great job with bobbleheads and fireworks. They do a bad job with making a baseball team be a contender. And DiPoto flat out missed in the offseason. We can argue about whether or not he should have, quote, spent more money, but he missed. The acquisitions he made, by and large, were all gone before the All-Star break. It was, and then the fact that they send out those three, Service, Justin Hollander, who's the GM, and then Jerry DiPoto, the president of baseball operations, but no word from ownership. John Stanton nowhere to be seen. So, we don't know if they're committed to spending money to try. Because baseball is a sport that you can spend an unlimited amount of money. We all know that they had the highest gross or highest revenue last year in Major League Baseball, so they made money. So it's just an organization that just just doesn't get it. And yet fans will still go. You saw the last couple of weeks of the season. If you guys were watching any of those games, the place was almost packed. And I think for them, you have to convince people. I'd like to believe that they want to still get to the postseason. But you have to wonder deep down if they're thinking to themselves, well, we go to a wild card game, series. Maybe it's going to be on the road. We have a couple games, and so be it. Or are we good enough here because we just packed the ballpark for the last couple weeks of the season and made our money, and that's good enough. We move on to next year.
Yeah, boy, that sounds so familiar. Jerry DiPoto, and I mentioned Ian. He's treated us well here. He's been on our show. He's
treated me well. Yeah. He's treated me well, and I like the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He's been around since 2015. What's in his future after this?
He's going to be back next year, as is Scott Service. And here's the problem, Donnie and Rick, is this. We don't know where the blame game should be pointed at. Is it DiPoto? Is it Hollander? Is it the baseball ops guys? Or is it ownership? That's the part we don't get. We don't understand, and there's really no answer, because I'd like to believe that Jerry DiPoto would like to go out and get good players and spend money to bring good players in here. Listen, no one is going to criticize you if you go out and sign a guy for a lot of money, like the Mets did this season, and invest in those players. And by the way, the Rangers did the same thing the last couple of years. It's paid off for them. So it's not like, we can point to the Mets and say it doesn't work. No, it does work for some teams. That's what Cal Raleigh's message was. But if you go out and spend money and the guy doesn't perform, well, then that's on the player. If you go out and get Tommy La Stella and Cole Hummel and Colton Wong, and that's your offseason, then you're up for criticism. And the question is, was it the GM thinking he was the smartest guy in the room, or was it ownership not wanting to spend the money? Bottom line is this. They didn't go to the postseason. It's professional sports. Going to the postseason and winning is key. And when DiPoto says our goal is sustainability and consistency and 54% and not a World Series necessarily right now, I don't understand that. I don't comprehend that. I can tell you this. The Seahawks, they don't think that way. There is no part of the John Schneider, Pete Carroll DNA in any way, shape, or form that thinks that way. And frankly, with just 2 years under their belt, I don't think the Kraken think that way. I was really critical, as you guys know, of them the first year. Yep. If there's any team in this market that could say, "Hey, we're building this thing up," it's them. But I still think they made some mistakes the first year in the expansion draft. That's fine. They made mistakes, and they didn't have a sense of urgency necessarily that first year. And I think that was a little bit of a mistake. But they more than made up for it last year, guys. They more than made up for it, and the Mariners have no excuse.
I'm going to guess Devin Witherspoon is all the talk in Seattle. What a game!
He wasn't until DiPoto took the mic yesterday.
But let's go Monday, Tuesday. What a game! What a game! 2 sacks, 3 hits on quarterback Daniel Jones, 7 tackles, the interception. You see Pete Carroll gushing about him when he's talking about him. But what a game he had, Ian.
Well, Rick, he's fun to watch too. He plays with an aggression and an anger and he's only a $185. And you always hear the term, he plays bigger than that. He does. He plays bigger than that. And, I think the only question about Devin Witherspoon, can he hold up? Because he throws his body around there. He's aggressive, but he's fun to watch. And, I think when they were really good on defense, a handful of years ago, the Legion of Boom and all that, yeah, you had Sherm and Cam and Earl and, those high draft picks or the all-pro guys. But they had a couple other dudes playing at the cornerback position, Jeremy Lane and Byron Maxwell, for example. Those guys were nasty. They were undersized. Now, they never had the ceiling that Devin Witherspoon has. They weren't high draft picks by any means. But those dudes played with just a little bit of anger in them, and I think Carroll loves that. And this defense has been missing that. They've been missing it the last couple of years. Witherspoon brings that. That pick six was a game changer. I mean, the score doesn't indicate it. I mean, that game was close. The Giants are walking in. They score. They're down by either 4 or 3, depending on if they go for 2. One-score game, and he jumped the route. They saw it earlier. Tariq Woolen had a chance to do the same play earlier, but this time it's Witherspoon in the slot, and he makes that pick six, and thanks for coming. It was a spectacular play, and he's always going to be compared, by the way, to Jalen Carter, who's having a really nice season as a rookie for the Philadelphia Eagles. Carter played 21 snaps the other day. This dude played every snap. You tell me who's more valuable.
Seahawks, 11 sacks. They had 5 in the previous 3 weeks. They'd love to play the Giants O-line every week for the rest of the year. But how do you explain that? That's the biggest sack total since 1986 for the Seahawks.
Well, part of it is the Giants are awful. And now they were missing their starting left tackle. They lost their center in the game. I would argue that the Seahawks also didn't have one offensive starter from week 1 playing either in his position. Evan Brown, the starting center, was playing left guard. The rest of the other 4 guys were all backups. They had a completely new offensive line. They didn't have those issues. You still have to make the plays. And Seattle made the plays. They switched up to more of a 4-3 defense a couple weeks ago. For a while, they've been talking about this 3-4 and 3 defensive linemen, 2 outside linebackers. But if you look at it to the naked eye, you go, oh, there's 5 guys on the defensive line. Now there's 4. They go big nickel, which they'd like it to be Jamal Adams if he's healthy. Witherspoon can play there. Devin Bush. But they have changed the offensive or the defensive schematics. But maybe more importantly, some dudes are making plays. Mario Edwards is having a really nice year quietly and flying under the radar. Draymond Jones has been good when he's been in there. Boye Mafe has really taken a step forward this year. Their best pass rusher is supposed to be Darrell Taylor. Number 2 is supposed to be Uchenna Nwosu. Those guys are kind of down the list. Jaron Reed, before he got banged up, spectacular. Last couple of weeks. And then they send pressure from everywhere. You saw, Witherspoon got to the quarterback. Adams had a chance to get a sack, almost got to the quarterback, and probably, if it wasn't his first game in 13 months, would have made that tackle. So, yeah, Clinton Hurt, their defensive coordinator. We love to rip on coaches. Everybody, I'm sure everybody in your city has been an NHL general manager at some point.
Yep.
Everybody in our city has been an offensive or defensive coordinator at some point. And so it's always the easiest thing to rip on, the D and the offensive and defensive coordinators. Let's give Clint Hurt, the D coordinator, some credit. He's done a nice job. Okay, so bye week for the Seahawks. Tell us about Geno Smith's health. Bye week, undoubtedly a good thing given that, and your opinion of what Drew Lock did filling in, I guess you would call it a part-time basis on Monday night. Yeah, he had the series at the end of the half, actually 2 series at the end of the half. He looked fine, looked a little rusty on a couple throws, but also made a couple plays. You saw what he's able to do with his legs. I know they always talk about they feel comfortable in Drew, but he didn't take 1 snap last year in the regular season. But I think maybe blessing in disguise, assuming Geno's okay, and we won't know until next week because they don't have to do an injury report or anything this week. So they'll go off quietly into the sunset, and we'll hear from them next Monday and Tuesday, or Monday and Wednesday. I assume Geno's fine. They would have done all the structural tests and everything. They wouldn't have let him back in there if he was hurting. I saw him. We're setting up for our post-game show. I always kind of watch guys when they walk off the field to see if they're banged up or hurt. When they leave the stadium, are they iced up, are they in a boot or what have you? He seemed to be fine in that regard. But it was nice to see Drew Lock in there and get some snaps and get some reps. And I think it goes back to the hit. It was a bad hit. It was a late hit, bad hit. But in front of the Giants bench, it's not going to get called. In front of the Seahawks bench, it's 15 yards. And it was a tense game, guys. It was weird. There was a lot going on in that game. A lot of chatter, a lot of talk, a lot of pressure on the Giants, and the Seahawks handled it far better. And they're not perfect, but 3-1 right now. I think if you would have said that at the start of the season, 3-1 heading to the bye, they would have taken that. This interview sustainable? I give it 54%. Ian, 54. You're hired. Well, and that means because we're going on an average. Next week, I'm either a little higher or a little lower. I can always go lower and then just make it up the next week because it's about over a sustained period of time. Consistency, sustainability, and patience, gentlemen. I would urge Canucks fans to please have the same for your local hockey team up there. Big game tonight. Rick, I can't believe you didn't ask me about Abbotsford, huh? Big, huge game tonight. Why are you not here? Why are you not in Abbotsford? I got home at 7:30 last night from New York. Oh, yeah. Played. It's 2 hours away, Ian. It's 2 hours in a car. Practice hockey does not interest me, Rick. I told you that last week. Let me know. I'll talk to you next week. Next Tuesday, opening night. Huh? Yep. Yeah. We'll be ready. I'll have it all broken down for you next Tuesday. All right. All right. Ian was hanging out at Studio 54. Is that still around in New York? I'm not sure. Studio 54. Hey. Donnie, I love you for that because you know what? You and I are the same. As soon as I saw the 54%, I'm looking for emojis and stuff like that for the 54. I'm
Perfect.
The same thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's scary. We're on the same wavelength. That's frightening. Next weekend, thank you so much.